In 2011, scientists from Chile found a weird-looking fossil in Antarctica that looked like a squashed football. Almost 10 years later, the rock just sat on a shelf in Chile's National Museum of Natural History with no specific label. It went by The Thing in the museum because it looked like something from a science fiction movie. When the scientists finally got their hands on the strange fossil, it turned out it was actually a giant soft-shell egg from around 66 million years ago. This one is more than 11 inches long and 7 inches wide. A regular chicken egg is just 2.5 inches long, and an ostrich egg is almost 6 inches long for comparison. So, the Thing won the title of the biggest soft-shell egg ever found and the second largest egg of any animal we know of. The only bigger egg that was ever found was that of the extinct Madagascan elephant bird, which is also 1.5 times as tall as Michael Jordan. The bird, not the egg. The Antarctic egg is also special because it's the first fossil ever found in this part of the world. So, whoever left it there must have been one big creature, probably a giant sea turtle that lived long ago, like a mosasaur. This is surprising because most scientists thought these creatures didn't even lay eggs. So this discovery could change what we know about them. The egg is also unique because it has a thin eggshell and no pores, which is totally different from most dinosaur eggs. It actually looks more like the eggs of lizards and snakes, but it came from a giant creature related to these animals. No known dinosaurs or flying reptiles from that time and place were big enough to lay such a huge egg, so it must have been a mosasaur after all. But we can't be 100% sure. Scientists did a lot of work and studied 259 types of living reptiles, like lizards and snakes, and their eggs. From this, they figured out that the mommy who laid the egg was probably at least 23 feet long, not counting her tail. During the late Cretaceous period, this part of Antarctica might have been like a nursery. Paleontologists have found bones of tiny mosasaurs and plesiosaurs in the same area, along with bones from the grown-up ones. Archaeologists in Norway made another cool but literally discovery and found dozens of arrows that had been hidden in ice for 6,000 years. They were melting out of a large ice patch in the high mountains, covering an area of about 45 football fields. In 2014 and 2016, when the summers were extra warm, scientists went to an ice patch called Langfoni to look around. They also found lots of reindeer bones and antlers there. Some of the arrows were whole and some in pieces, along with 5 arrowheads around the melting ice patch. This is more arrows than have been found at any other frozen site in the world. Some of the 68 found arrows date back to the Neolithic period, and the newest ones are from the 14th century of the Common Era. Ice is like the perfect time machine that can preserve whatever ends up there in an almost perfect condition. Langfoni became famous as one of the first ice patch sites after a local hiker found a 3,300-year-old leather shoe right next to its edge. Scientists are studying places like this to understand how people used these sites and how the ice patches from Norway to North America changed over time. Now, once upon a time, around 32,000 years ago, to be exact, a squirrel buried some seeds near a river in Siberia. Am I the only one getting the Ice Age vibes? Anyway, these seeds belong to a plant with cute white flowers. Thousands of years later, a group of scientists found these seeds buried deep in the frozen ground, about as far down as a 12-story building is tall. The seeds were surrounded by ice and bones of animals, like mammoths, bison, and woolly rhinoceroses. The mature seeds had been damaged, maybe by some squirrel, but some of the younger seeds still had good plant parts inside them. The scientists carefully took those out and put them in small containers to help them grow. And here comes the coolest part. They were able to grow the plants. Their flowers were shaped a little differently from the flowers of the same plant that grows today. After a year, the Ice Age plant even made new seeds. Based on this, the scientists suggested that permafrost could be a depository for an ancient gene pool, and we could find extinct species there and bring them back to life. Scientists on an icebreaker in Antarctica were looking for whales but found something way more unusual. The camera behind the ship, which is as heavy as a car, detected 16 million ice fish nests on the floor of the Weddell Sea. The nests were located about every 10 inches in all directions and covered an area of 93 square miles, which is slightly bigger than the whole of Washington, D.C. The colony even had a distinct border, which was a line in the sand. The scientists were in the area because they were studying a special spot in the ocean where the water was a little warmer than the water around it. In this warmer water, they found tiny animals called zooplankton near the top. When the young ice fish hatch, they swim up to this area to eat the zooplankton before going back down to the seafloor to grow up and have their own offspring. Since there was so much food, it made sense to see ice fish in this warm water. But they didn't expect to find such a huge number of ice fish nests, much more than anyone had ever seen before. New Zealand's Antarctic Heritage Fund found some old photo negatives in a hut in Antarctica. They turned out to be unique images from the Ross Sea Party. It was a famous failed expedition led by Ernest Shackleton. He wanted to become the first person to cross Antarctica by land, from the Weddell Sea to the Ross Sea, passing through the South Pole. But things went wrong when their ship, the Aurora, was blown out to sea. They had to use the hut from another explorer, Captain Robert Falcon Scott. His goal was to be the first person to reach the North Pole, but sadly, he didn't succeed either. The negatives were made of cellulose nitrate and were found stuck together in the small box. The Trust took the negatives back to New Zealand, where they carefully separated them and discovered 22 hidden images. Many of the photos were damaged, but the Trust could still recognize some familiar places around McMurdo Sound, a well-known area in Antarctica. No one knows for sure who took the pictures. In December 2021, some scientists noticed a strange mark on the Larsen Ice Shelf, a giant sheet of ice off the eastern coast of Antarctica. They thought it might be a river flowing under the ice, so they drilled down over 1,600 feet to check it out. They expected to find water, but they didn't expect to see that the water was full of fast-moving creatures called amphipods. The scientists also found that the water in the underground river had unusual layers of currents moving in different directions, which they still don't fully understand. Another surprising thing happened during their research. On December 20th of the same year, a volcano erupted far away in Tonga, and the pressure waves from the eruption were detected all the way down in the ice river in Antarctica. It shows how everything on our planet is connected, even in the most distant places.
In a frosty Canadian park, hidden deep beneath layers of thick ice, scientists discovered a bizarre skeleton they named the Frozen Dragon. The skeleton had been in the frozen ice for millions of years. It took experts decades to work out the species of this strange fossil. It was identified as a new genus of pterosaur. Pterosaurs were massive flying reptiles with wingspans of over 16 feet. Their heads were 3.5 times the size of their bodies. Pterosaurs lived 76 million years ago, when they soared above the dinosaurs. Scientists described them as the biggest, meanest, and most bizarre animals that ever flew. The new genus has been named Cryodragon boreas, which translates to Frozen Dragon of the North Winds. In 2013, a young mountaineer was climbing one of the tallest mountains in Western Europe, Mont Blanc. He noticed a strange metal box poking out of the snow. The mountaineer pried the box open and found that it was filled with precious rubies, emeralds, and sapphires. The climber immediately handed the box to the authorities. It was discovered that the box likely belonged to a passenger on one of 2 flights from India that crashed into the mountain over 50 years ago. The box was valued to be worth over $200,000, and authorities are still searching for the heir to the small box of treasures. In northwest Siberia in 2007, a reindeer herder was on an outing with his sons when he noticed something strange in the ice. The man realized it was a frozen mammoth calf and immediately contacted the local museum. The calf was named Luba, and was the best preserved mammoth mummy in the world at the time of its discovery. Luba had been in the ice for 41,800 years and is around 30 to 35 days old. From trunk to tail, the mammoth calf is roughly the same size as a large calf. If you're interested in seeing for yourself, Luba travels to museums all around the world. On the frozen continent of Antarctica, covered in layers of ice and snow, is Mount Erebus, the frozen volcano. The volcano was discovered in the middle of an eruption in 1841 by explorers on an Arctic expedition. The volcano is over 12,000 feet tall and has been active for the last 1.3 million years. Deep within the middle of the volcano is a huge crater filled with large volumes of molten lava. The volcano has occasional explosions, which means it's classified as being in continuing eruption. However, these eruptions are nothing to worry about because they're generally rather small. Back in 1991, two hikers were traveling across the Italian Alps when they stumbled across a body that they presumed to belong to a recently lost hiker. The duo trudged back down the mountain to report their unfortunate findings. Once the remains were recovered, it was clear that the body was not recent at all. Scientists determined that the Iceman was more than 5,000 years old and named him Otzi. The discovery was unlike anything scientists had ever before seen because the body was so well preserved. For years, Otzi was studied by scientists who discovered that our ancestors have a lot more in common with us than we ever knew before. Otzi was covered in ink body art. Research done on the contents of his stomach revealed that his last meal was dry-cured meat, similar to the bacon we eat today. Otzi has at least 19 relatives living today, somewhere in Central Europe. Scientists were researching ancient squirrel burrows in Siberia when they came across something interesting. One of the squirrels had hidden away precious seeds deep beneath the ground. The seeds had been encased in ice for 32,000 years. The seeds were for the flower Silene stenophilia, which had long since gone extinct. Amazingly, scientists were able to recover plant tissue from inside the seeds and grow an entire crop of flowers. They've since reintroduced the previously extinct flower to natural habitats all across the world. In 1930, a team of Norwegian scientists sailed around the Arctic Ocean, conducting research on the seas and glaciers. They reached White Island, a dangerous and icy land no human had set foot on before, or so they thought. The scientists were shocked to discover the tip of a small boat sticking out of the snow. Frozen inside the boat, they found scientific equipment and various personal items, including a jacket monogrammed S.A. Undre. They had discovered the wreck of the famous Undre Arctic balloon expedition. In 1897, Swedish explorers, led by Undre, attempted to travel to the North Pole by hydrogen balloon. No one had ever heard from them ever again. People only found out what happened to them when the wreck was discovered 33 years later. It turns out that the balloon had crashed on White Island only 2 days after departing from Sweden. The explorers traveled along the island on a small makeshift boat, but were unable to make it any further. The best preserved woolly mammoth ever found was discovered in an area of permafrost in Siberia in 2010. Scientists named the frozen mammoth Yucca after the small village near where it was found. Yucca had been frozen for 39,000 years and is thought to have been around 6 to 8 years old. Because Yucca is so well preserved, it has been studied for years and provided new information about mammoths. In 2019, scientists reported that they were able to activate cells taken from Yucca's tissue. Maybe one day we'll have woolly mammoths roaming the land. From looking at pictures and videos of Antarctica, the continent appears to be freezing cold, covered in snow, and flat, except for a few small hills. Scientists believe that too. When studying the Gomburtsev Mountains in the early 2000s, they were shocked to discover that the small rocky hills were actually the peak of a gigantic mountain formation under a mile of snow. Using radar technology, researchers worked out that the mountains are really around 10,000 feet tall and sprawl across 750 miles. This is around the same size as the European Alps, except hidden under tons of ice and snow. At a gold mine in Siberia, A businessman was examining a nearby river when he noticed something interesting in the frost. It was a small woolly rhino calf that was later named Sasha. The woolly rhino has been extinct for 15,000 years. It's thought that Sasha could have been frozen in the ice for up to 39,000 years. Sasha is unique because it's the only full-body woolly rhino to have ever been discovered. Glaciers around the northern Italian town of Pelo have begun to melt. Artifacts from decades and even centuries ago have been discovered pouring out of the ice. Personal belongings from soldiers have been found, things like diaries, photographs, and even love letters. Historians have even uncovered an entire cabin preserved beneath the ice. The cabin was filled with hard metal helmets and clothes. In 1845, Sir John Franklin embarked on an ill-fated expedition to the North Pole. The crew traveled on two ships, HMS Erebus and the ironically named HMS Terror. The expedition met with disaster, and both ships were lost to the icy waters. In 2016, the HMS Terror was discovered by a team of researchers. Despite being lost for 170 years, the freezing cold waters had maintained the ship in pristine condition. Scientists describe the ship as frozen in time. Dinner plates and glasses were still on shelves, beds and desks were still in order, and even the passengers' luggage appeared to be in good condition. The HMS Erebus was also discovered nearby, but due to changing water conditions, the ship wasn't in great shape. The glacial ice surrounding a mountain passageway in Norway that was notoriously used by the Vikings has revealed hundreds of ancient artifacts. One of these artifacts was a giant unopened wooden box that was welded together. Researchers were beside themselves with anticipation, waiting to open this box. They believed it would be filled with Viking treasures or artifacts that would give us an insight into ancient society. When they opened the box, all that was inside was a plain old beeswax candle. It turns out that this box wasn't actually as old as they thought it was. By analyzing the candle, they discovered that the box dates back to the 17th century. The age of the Vikings had ended by the 11th century. It's likely that the candle box belonged to a farmer who was shipping it from his summer farm to his winter farm to light up the long nights.
It was one of the biggest creatures ever to roam the Earth. It was longer than your average school bus and could easily weigh more than 10 elephants combined. But where did it live? How did it end up having this size? And most importantly, why is it extinct nowadays? Let's find out. The Megalodon was the largest predator ever known in our planet's history. In terms of its location, the Megalodon lived practically in all waters on our globe, except near the poles. The reason why there were no Megalodon teeth found in Antarctica is probably that the gigantic creature adapted to only warm tropical and subtropical waters. The younger ones liked to keep to the shores, while full-grown adults preferred coastal areas, but they could easily move into the open ocean as well. How do we know the Megalodon was so widely spread? We can only presume, based on the fact that they discovered the most northern fossils off the coast of Denmark and the most southern in New Zealand. The discussion of how the Megalodon got this size is still open in the scientific community. They recently found out that not all the specimens from this fascinating species reach the same huge size. This has to do with a little something called the Bergmann's Rule, which says that the temperature of the surrounding environment affects the animal's body size because they either need to conserve or shed heat. The megalodons that reach cooler waters probably needed more body weight to make sure they survived in low temperatures. On the contrary, those living in warmer waters had to be smaller to avoid burning up. But what did this enormous fish look like? Most modern depictions show the megalodon resembling an enormous great white shark. But well, it seems it may not necessarily be correct. The megalodon likely had a much shorter nose and a flatter jaw that looked almost squashed when compared with a great white shark. It also seems to have something in common with the modern blue shark: extra-long pectoral fins. They needed these to support their weight and size while navigating the planet's waters. Lastly, the lady megalodons, seem to have been about twice as large as the gentlemen. As for their offspring, even a small megalodon was enormous, at least 6.5 feet from nose to tail. How do we know that? Because specialists have stumbled upon Megalodon nursery habitats in Panama, Maryland, the Canary Islands, and Florida. Even the piles of used diapers were enormous. Nah, not really. Surely the scariest aspect of the Megalodon's looks was its mouth. I mean, think about it. Megalodon had whales for dinner, so it obviously needed to open its mouth wide enough. Scientists have estimated that its jaw would span a mind-boggling size, 9 by 11 feet wide. Just to paint you a better picture, that means it could have easily gulped down 2 adult people side by side. Wait, which 2 adults? Those impressive jaws also feature 276 teeth. Based on modern reconstructions of the force of its bite, it looks like it may have been one of the most, if not the most, powerful animals of prey ever to exist. For comparison, humans can have a bite force of around 1,300 newtons. Today, great white sharks have been estimated to be able to bite down with a force of over 18,000 newtons. The Megalodon tops all the records, with an estimated power of bite up to 10 times greater than that. It could basically crush a car with very little effort. Its teeth were also pretty amazing. Similar to sharks, the Megalodon was fast in replacing its broken or worn teeth. With 4 or 5 rows of teeth in its mouth, it basically acted like a conveyor belt, growing back damaged or missing teeth within about 48 hours. This means that an adult Megalodon probably would have grown several thousand teeth throughout its lifetime. It was nice of them to do that, though, since it's probably one of the reasons why Megalodon teeth are so common in fossil records, and we're able to study them properly. To maintain its impressive physique, the Megalodon had to eat somewhere around 2,500 pounds of food per day. Can't wrap your head around that? Well, it was the equivalent of 1¼ cows per day to survive. It's like if you had to eat 3,300 cans of tuna every day. I've used the word Megalodon a lot, but have I mentioned where it comes from? When translated from Greek, it means giant tooth. Ah, those clever Greeks. However, this giant shark's full scientific name is a bit more complicated: Carcharocles megalodon. But are these gigantic predators actually extinct? We tend to believe so, but let's be honest for a second. We've come to know more about the surface of Mars than the depths of our oceans. Like, we've only explored 15% of our oceans altogether. Who knows what may be lying out there in the deep? Maybe some ancient predators? The Mariana Trench is the deepest oceanic trench on Earth. The Challenger Deep, its deepest part, is so deep that you could dip the whole of Mount Everest in there and it would still be over a mile above the surface. That's deep. If a Megalodon or 2 ever needed a place to crash, that would be a discreet enough location. However, the Mariana Trench is not a particularly comfy place to be in. Because it's cold and steeped in total darkness and all. The temperatures here are around 36 degrees Fahrenheit all year round. And to top it all off, the pressure is 1,000 times stronger than at sea level. So it's safe to assume that if any Megalodon is hiding in here, its teeth and bones might not be looking so good. Because of the intense pressure here in the Mariana Trench, proteins and calcium start to dissolve and disintegrate. That's why, for example, the Haddell snailfish, the deepest dwelling fish we've discovered, has evolved to feature flexible cartilage instead of bones. To survive here, the Megalodon would also need to learn to navigate in complete darkness. That means it would have to either become luminescent or evolve to grow massive eyes like the giant squid. While it may sound like an intriguing and good idea for a movie script, most scientists don't think it's possible. Why? Well, most of them say it's because of the Megalodon's size. Most foods that Megalodons like to eat live in shallow ocean areas and not in the deep, deep sea. Specialists believe that if these animals were actually still roaming our waters, there's no way we wouldn't know about it. They would need to come up for dinner every now and then, right? Their food is also the most likely cause of why the Megalodon is not alive anymore. While some specialists believe the Megalodon became extinct because of a drop in the ocean water temperature, most scientists suggested that the shifting food chain dynamics may have been more to blame. Why? Because at some point, there was less and less of its primary food source, baleen whales, and at the same time, the numbers of its natural competitors, like smaller predatory sharks like the great white shark and whales, increased. The Megalodon did live on this planet a lot more than we did, and way back when we didn't even exist yet. They were here for nearly 70 times longer than we, modern humans, have, inhabiting the oceans for around 20 million years. Homo sapiens appeared around 300,000 years ago. The Megalodon managed to survive for so long mostly because of its unbeatable size. I mean, they can make a meal out of almost everything in the sea at the time. We may think about both of them as prehistoric creatures, but the Megalodons and the dinosaurs never coexisted on Earth. The dinosaurs probably died out about 66 million years ago. Megalodons seem to have appeared a bit later. That's because the oldest Megalodon fossils we have yet discovered are from the Miocene epoch, which began 23 million years ago. So long, Meg!
Do you know that NASA explores not only stars, planets, galaxies, or black holes? Hard to believe, but yes. The agency also works on discoveries here on our home planet Earth. So what has NASA recently discovered? Is there life under the ice? While they were analyzing data recently, they discovered something unbelievable hiding under Antarctica's ice. And this discovery not only changes everything we know about the whole water system of the Earth, but it may also help with research about life in space. Humankind's existence might depend on understanding Antarctica and its secrets. So, the recent discoveries reveal vital information about our survival. But before we continue, let's see how much you know about this place, where it's only ice as far as your eyes can see. Antarctica is one of the world's 7 continents in the southern hemisphere. It's the 5th largest continent in terms of total area, and that means it's almost twice the size of Australia. Want to see real meteorites? Go to Antarctica. Due to its dry climate, Antarctica is one of the best places to observe space. But what's even greater is that you can find meteorites on the white surface of the continent. Scientists have already plucked about 45,000 meteorites from the ice, and they think they can see another 300,000. Since there aren't many terrestrial rocks there, it's easy for them to spot them, thanks to their dark color. Antarctica's dry desert environment also helps preserve them, even the ones that fell to Earth more than 1 million years ago. And can you imagine any volcanic activity in Antarctica? It's hard. But this place is where fire meets the ice. West Antarctica is where most volcanic activity occurs. Scientists recently found that 138 volcanoes exist in West Antarctica alone. Wow! You would think that Antarctica is always cold, but no. Its coastal regions can get as warm as 50 degrees Fahrenheit. But have you ever wondered what Antarctica would look like if there were no ice? It may seem unimaginable now, but it was not always covered by ice. That was 34 million years ago, though, so nobody could tell how the continent's surface would be without the ice. But NASA changed that. They generated computer simulations and created the most accurate map of it as of today. What they saw was incredible. The continent was not flat at all like it seemed. It's pretty bumpy with valleys, rolling plains, and high mountains. But this was nothing next to what they had discovered under Antarctica's ice. So, what is it? Drum roll, please. NASA found 2 new subglacial lakes. And what's even cooler about it is that they spotted these lakes from space. How is that? If your answer is high-tech satellites, then you're right. In 2003, NASA launched a satellite called IceSat. It measured ice sheet mass balance and cloud and aerosol heights. The satellite also helped create the ice-free map of Antarctica. In 2010, the European Space Agency launched the second satellite, Cryosat-2. It was for tracking the changes in the thickness of the ice. Then, in 2018, NASA launched the third one, IceSat-2. a follow-on to the IceSat spacecraft. It measured ice sheet elevation and sea ice thickness. It was NASA's most advanced Earth-observing laser instrument. It delivered the highest precision data. And when that was combined with the data from the other satellites, it was possible to spot these two new lakes near a pair of larger ones. But how is it possible that these lakes exist in the first place? The average thickness of most Antarctica ice is approximately 1.2 miles. However, it can get over 1.8 miles thick in some places, especially during the winter. So, you might think that there's nothing under there, but science says otherwise. It's not quite possible to see it with your bare eyes, but the continent's ice is slowly but constantly flowing in different directions under the force of its weight. But scientists could not figure out how water moved for many years. That started to change in 2007, when data gathered from the IceSat provided insight into what hides beneath the surface. They first discovered an entire network of meltwater lakes connected under Antarctica's fast-flowing ice streams, and there were hundreds of them. Scripps Institution of Oceanography glaciologist Helen Amanda Fricker figured that the elevation changes measured by IceSat happened because of the dynamics of these lakes. They did not hold meltwater statically. Instead, they were filling and draining continuously over time through a system of waterways. And as they did that, the ice above rose and fell. But where do they drain? The ocean, of course, and it drains a lot. A recent study, co-authored by Fricker, found that the drainage of one lake flushed as much as 198 billion gallons into the ocean in only 3 days. Countless mysteries about how nature works are still waiting to be solved. But finding the two new lakes will give scientists a better picture of how fast the Antarctic ice sheet will change as the climate gets warmer, and how this will affect global ocean currents and sea level rise. The filling and draining cycle of the lakes also caused the ice sheet to suffer cracks and crevices. So, the information they find from these new lakes will also give them a better understanding of the damage on the surface of the ice. They will also be able to assess how this filling and draining system influences the speed at which ice slips into the oceans and seas. And that means they can evaluate how the added fresh water may alter marine ecosystems. This discovery may also suggest whether life is under the ice. Wow! Scientists drilled through about 3,504 feet of ice and found that water samples taken from one of the lakes contained approximately 10,000 bacterial cells per milliliter. Such a high number of bacterial life is a good sign, because that means the icy waters might also support higher life forms, such as microanimals, and one of these new lakes might even be their home. But the most exciting thing is that the new lakes might help them understand whether life on other planets is possible. Scientists believe any life below the frozen surface of the planet Mars might follow the patterns seen in Antarctica's lakes. So, there is a possibility that they might find critical new information on the type of life that may have existed on the red planet. You wouldn't want to be there during the winter, though. The lowest temperature on Earth you can experience is negative 128 degrees Fahrenheit. In 2010, there was an even lower temperature of negative 135 degrees Fahrenheit. And you may feel this cold much worse due to the strong and dry winds. Did you know that the size of the ice surface on Antarctica also changes throughout the year? It's about 1.2 million square miles during the summer, but when it's winter, it grows to 7.3 million square miles. Yet, despite the change, it remains the largest piece of ice on Earth. Sorry, Arctic, you lose. Do you know these cute little penguins? Consider these animals the locals, because there is no native population in Antarctica. It's a no man's land, because no single country owns it. But do you know who really owns it? 5 different species of penguins, seals, and killer whales. Ha. Despite the continent's harsh conditions, you can visit it as a tourist for fishing and research purposes. Around 5,000 people reside on the continent during summer at research stations. But when winter comes, the number naturally drops down to 1,000. Antarctica's ice blanket makes up 70% of the world's freshwater reserves. Imagine what would happen if it melted. The global sea levels would be raised by almost 200 feet.
In 2021, while drilling about 11 feet beneath the surface of permafrost in northeastern Siberia, researchers uncovered a 24,000-year-old frozen life form. And then, they brought it to life. Before cloning it, or better said, it cloned itself. This might sound like the beginning of a sinister horror story, but don't worry, it's actually quite the opposite. What scientists unearthed was a microscopic frozen organism that could fundamentally reshape what we think about evolution and survival. The uncovered tiny creatures are called bdelloid rotifers, microscopic animals with little wheel-like mouths that they use both for moving and feeding. They were first discovered in 1696 and are fairly common in freshwater environments around the world, with a few saltwater species. They might seem unremarkable, but scientists have been studying them since early microscopes made it possible to actually see them. Because even though there are only a few dozen microns wide, they're surprisingly complex, with brains, guts, muscles, and reproductive systems. Could it be that within that complexity lies the secret to ultimate resilience, maybe even for us humans? Let's break it down. These creatures are extremophiles. That means they can survive being completely drained of water at any point in their life cycle, then lie dormant until rehydrated. But that's not all. They can also persevere through some of the harshest conditions on Earth, or in outer space, or even being stuck in the Siberian permafrost wasteland for tens of thousands of years. This is possible because they can enter cryptobiosis, a condition where organisms pause their metabolism and become nearly inactive. It may sound sciencey, but actually, some of the everyday products we eat are stored in a fridge thanks to this phenomenon. Take yeast, for example. Live yeast cells are surrounded by a protective layer made of dead cells and some nutrients. You can keep yeast at room temperature, but if cryptobiosis comes into play, in the form of your fridge or freezer, it stores much better and longer. During cryptobiosis, rotifers accumulate protective compounds like chaperone proteins, which help them repair and recover once favorable conditions return. Chaperone proteins are like tiny bodyguards. Their job is to keep other proteins in the cell from falling apart under pressure. When the body is stressed, whether from heat, cold, toxins, dehydration, or just the natural aging process, the proteins inside our cells can start to misfold. Proteins need to be folded into very specific shapes to function properly, and when that structure breaks down, they become useless, or worse, harmful. Misfolded proteins can pile up and interfere with normal cell function. In some cases, they clump together in ways that poison the cell. This kind of damage is even linked to serious health conditions. So, if rotifers have developed powerful proteins that prevent cellular chaos even under extreme conditions, could we use them to protect human cells from diseases and aging? By analyzing the age of the ice they were found in, scientists figured out that these frozen rotifers were at least 24,000 years old. That's a huge leap from earlier studies, which showed they could survive frozen for only about 10 years. Now that's what you call record-breaking. This period of Earth's history is known as the Late Pleistocene Epoch, a time dominated by the Ice Age, which means these invertebrates were lying dormant when Manny and Sid were having their adventure while roaming the icy landscapes, along with saber-toothed cats and giant ground sloths. Fun fact: although animated movies like Ice Age show woolly mammoths as huge, towering giants, they were actually about the same size and weight as today's average African elephant. Nature and evolution can be so cruel, yet fascinatingly unpredictable. Massive, menacing beasts that came from the Ice Age couldn't survive it, yet something tiny and weird, like a bdelloid, could. But regarding our unfrozen creature, after the soil thawed, the organism didn't just begin moving again. it also started reproducing. This is thanks to an ability called parthenogenesis, a specific form of reproduction in which embryos develop from unfertilized eggs, allowing them to reproduce independently. It really is like cloning, but it happens naturally. Many organisms, such as certain insects, reptiles, and even some birds, are capable of parthenogenesis, at least under specific conditions. For example, in honeybees, males develop from unfertilized eggs through parthenogenesis, making them genetic copies of their mother. However, parthenogenesis is often seen as an evolutionary disadvantage because it limits genetic diversity, meaning that most species that reproduce this way eventually face extinction. Despite this, bdelloid rotifers have diversified into over 450 distinct species over millions of years, which is extremely rare. Scientists believe their survival comes down to a few evolutionary adaptations. They can pause their metabolism through cryptobiosis, repair their DNA with specialized proteins, and even borrow useful genes from other organisms using a process called horizontal gene transfer. Unlike most animals which rely solely on inherited DNA, these organisms can steal genetic material from bacteria, fungi, and even plants, splicing foreign genes into their genome to gain new survival traits. Some studies have shown that up to 10% of their active genome comes from foreign DNA. This could explain their extraordinary resilience. They borrow genes for stress resistance, toxin breakdown, or radiation repair, essentially patching and upgrading their DNA in real time. It's not like the mind flare from Stranger Things where the creature absorbs another organism to improve itself and grow. It's more like a spy stealing a blueprint from a rival lab to learn its secrets. When cells rupture, for example, when bacteria die nearby, bdelloids scoop up loose DNA fragments and integrate them into their own genome. Interestingly, the usual expected lifespan of bdelloid rotifers under normal circumstances is only 2 weeks. The soil sample that contained these rotifers also held nematodes or roundworms, another group of tiny survivors already known to withstand tens of thousands of years icebound. This isn't just limited to microscopic animals. Researchers have successfully regrown Antarctic moss and entire Campion plants from seeds and samples frozen for hundreds or even thousands of years. In 2016, a team of Japanese scientists brought tardigrades, or simply water bears, back to life after 30 years in cryptobiosis. Tardigrades are even more impressive because they can live in a suspended state for up to 30 years, without food or water, and with temperature swings from deep freeze to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. These guys can also endure crushing deep-sea pressures, vacuum, microgravity, and intense radiation of space. Remember when we said earlier that these species can survive the harshest conditions on Earth and beyond? It wasn't an exaggeration, and now you understand why. And it's exactly why NASA and its partners sent water bears and bdelloid rotifers into orbit. They've even been aboard the ISS, helping scientists understand how these animals handle microgravity, radiation, and stress. Not only that, but in 2007, the European Space Agency launched a bunch of tardigrades into low Earth orbit, completely exposed. No suit, no shield, floating in a vacuum. They were blasted by cosmic radiation, UV light 1,000 times stronger than what hits Earth's surface, and temperatures near absolute zero. And when they came back, most of them woke up and reproduced despite the harsh conditions they were exposed to. This ties into an old theory called panspermia, the idea that life didn't originate on Earth but arrived here, locked in space dust or trapped inside a meteorite. Before, maybe it sounded like a fringe science, but when organisms can brush off cosmic radiation, then it doesn't seem so far-fetched, does it? What about humans? Does this mean we now fully understand the way hibernation works and are close to putting humans in this state? Sorry for spoiling it for you, but it still feels more like science fiction. However, researching rotifers, water bears, and similar organisms can lead to massive breakthroughs in other fields. Their resilience might be a blueprint for medicine, for reshaping what it means to age. Maybe even to pause life itself, or extend it. We're talking real, practical innovations, from better preservation of human organs for transplantation to drugs that slow aging at the cellular level. And yes, maybe even cryogenic hibernation, long enough to make interstellar travel possible.
So what comes to your mind when you hear the word Antarctica? Most likely, cold, snow, ice, and penguins. Yet, this is one of the least explored regions in the world that hides many strange and unique things. Check them out. You don't have to go to Antarctica to see this weird thing. All you need to do is open Google Earth and move to one of the southernmost islands of Antarctica, King George Island. Recently, internet users have noticed a large and pretty strange cave entrance there. Where does this wide, dark passage lead? People started making suggestions. It's the entrance to a secret base or some laboratory. This is the part of the spaceship that crashed there thousands of years ago. This is the door to the ancient city of Antarctica. Perhaps there's a giant rock mountain with an ancient cave beneath all this snow and ice. Well, there's some ideas. Users have calculated the approximate dimensions of this cave. It might be about 74 feet high and 250 feet wide. You could hide a Boeing passenger jet in there. Nature probably created this entrance. This is a logical explanation, but there are two strange factors. First, take a look at the foot of the mountain. It seems that there are steps there. They're dark in color, as if they're made of stone. And if you look closely, you can notice something similar to human footprints. Has anyone entered this cave? Or maybe someone is still living there now. The second oddity is the disappearance of the mysterious finding. For the first time, people noticed it in a Google Maps snap in 2007. Then the entrance disappeared. Then it reappeared a few years later. After that, it vanished. And in 2022, people saw it again. Perhaps old snow melts, a new layer falls, and then the wind blows it away and the cycle repeats. But the alleged steps leading deep into the cave make one doubt the natural origin of this tunnel. You can easily find the coordinates on the internet and visit the cave via Google Earth. You might see something there and tell the world. There's another strange thing people discovered with the help of Google Earth. In 2020, one user found a strange object that looked like a giant ship 100 miles off the coast of Antarctica. It was covered with ice and snow and lying on its side. It looked like a cruise ship. You could notice the windows, the deck, and the bridge. But not all people agreed with this. Some claimed it was a spaceship. Others said it was some kind of secret building. The user who first noticed the ship stated that its size was about 400 feet, which is the perfect length for a passenger vessel. But what is this ship doing in such a remote place in the middle of a glacier? How did it get here? Who was its captain? No one has found the answers to these questions yet. In 2016, people using Google Earth discovered a photo of an unknown sea monster floating off the coast of Antarctica. This creature resembled a giant squid with a length of about 200 feet. This is slightly shorter than 3 train cars. Just imagine this kraken swimming in Antarctica's dark, icy waters and dragging to the bottom everything it meets on its way. Maybe it's the great and terrible Chulu, or one of its offspring. You will quickly notice this blood-red waterfall among Antarctica's endless, dazzling white landscapes. Don't worry, it's not blood. For many centuries, the waterfall has been painting snow in a bright red color. The stream flows straight out of a white iceberg. Let's look inside and find out what's happening there. Millions of years ago, there was a small crystal-clear pond, but then a glacier formed around it. A thick layer of ice and snow blocks sunlight, heat, and oxygen access. For millennia, the reservoir remained in this cold vacuum. But at one point, the water made a hole in the icy wall and broke out. When this salty water comes into contact with oxygen, it immediately turns scarlet or rusty. Antarctica is the only place where you can find such a unique natural phenomenon. One of the driest places on Earth is located in Antarctica. It's one of the most lifeless deserts in the world, the McMurdo Dry Valleys. In this desert, you won't see the scorching sun, hot sand, and cacti. A desert means a place with a lack of precipitation and life. The McMurdo Dry Valleys meet these parameters. But this place is also unique for Antarctica, since you won't find glaciers there. Despite the frost, ice can't form in the desert because it hasn't rained for millions of years there. It also never snows. A strong wind coming from the mountains reaches speeds up to 200 miles per hour. It would be difficult for you to stay on your feet there. The wind is filled with moisture. It heats up and evaporates all the liquid and snow in the desert because of its high speed. Only dry air reaches the ground. But you can find several lakes there. They don't freeze, only thanks to the high concentration of salt. The water is so salty that large life forms can't develop there. But scientists have found microscopic organisms near the lakes. 20 million years ago, Antarctica was filled with swamps and trees and swarming with insects and animals. But now, it resembles the surface of Mars, literally. Scientists and astronauts are exploring such regions as the McMurdo Dry Valleys, since the natural conditions there are similar to those on the Red Planet. So, before you go to Mars, you can practice living in similar places on Earth. Also, scientists discovered an underwater world in the Antarctic filled with hundreds of amphipods, crustacean animals similar to shrimp. Wait a minute, it happened in the Antarctic? But the McMurdo Dry Valleys are located in Antarctica. Well, the words are very similar, but what is the difference? Oh, and don't forget the Arctic. The Antarctic is the region in the southernmost part of Earth that houses the continent of Antarctica, and the Arctic is another land altogether. They have the same natural conditions, frost, ice, and snow, but they're located in different parts of the planet. The Arctic is at the North Pole, Antarctica is at the South Pole. Now, back to the discovery. Scientists put forward theories that the ice of the Antarctic hides a vast network of freshwater rivers and lakes. And in 2022, they found a new ecosystem. Researchers explored the Antarctic Ross Ice Shelf and its underwater rivers. This is a massive piece of ice floating in the ocean. A team from New Zealand used a special drilling rig equipped with a hot water supply to drill a hole 1,640 feet deep. That's more than the height of the Empire State Building. Then, they lowered some video cameras and saw thousands of crustaceans swimming in different directions. So it seems they're very unorganized. In the waters of the Antarctic, you can also meet some of the scariest creatures on the planet. These are sea spiders. They got this name because they resemble land spiders, but they're actually a species of marine arthropods. And unlike land spiders, those in the ocean are much larger. They look like 8 strong legs without a body. One such spider can be a dinner plate in width. Some of them have no eyes and have proboscises instead of jaws. Sea spiders are poorly studied because they live in deep, cold waters. Antarctica hides many little-known animals. There are long tunnels in its glaciers leading to scary darkness. On this cold continent, people have found the remains of giant dinosaurs and other ancient creatures, such as the ancestors of modern ducks. Many underground rivers and lakes hide unexplored wildlife. Even the ice here can be weird. Take a look at these striped icebergs. They have blue, black, green, and turquoise shapes. The color depends on the conditions of the water during freezing. For example, green lines appear because of algae. Blue ones form when the water freezes too quickly. Okay, I'm freezing. Time to go thaw somewhere warmer. Hawaii. Yeah.
We've all dreamed of visiting the Arctic and witnessing the natural wonders of polar bears frolicking on ice floes or the aurora borealis dancing across the sky. Well, sorry to break it to you, but you won't find any tourists flocking to Antarctica anytime soon. Why, you may ask? Let's dive into it. First off, where is Antarctica? It's located in the southern hemisphere, specifically at the South Pole. The Southern Ocean surrounds it, and most of the continent is covered by ice, making it one of the most remote and frigid places on Earth. Now, have you ever met someone who's visited Antarctica? Probably not. It's one of the least visited places on the planet, and only a handful of lucky explorers have seen its interior, which is mostly made up of glaciers and ice fields. But Trust me when I say the wildlife and scenery are out of this world. Why shouldn't you travel to Antarctica? Well, for starters, the environment is incredibly fragile and can be easily damaged. Plus, there are no native human populations on the continent, so your travels would essentially be like visiting an uninhabited island. And let's not forget that it's also one of the most expensive destinations to travel to. Despite all that, Antarctica is not exactly guarded like a fortress, but there is an international agreement called the Antarctic Treaty. This treaty was negotiated to prevent any unwanted activity on the continent and bans some forms of testing done there by member states. But the primary reason we can't just waltz into Antarctica is that it has a delicate ecosystem that needs protection. The treaty states that Antarctica should be used for peaceful purposes only and should be free from any human activity that could harm the environment. Scientists are still learning about the continent's unique ecosystem, and our activity and machines could disrupt the delicate balance that exists there. If you're still itching to go to Antarctica, getting permission isn't exactly a walk in the park. U.S. citizens, for example, need to complete a special form and send it to the Office of Ocean and Polar Affairs. And once you're there, you'll need to follow some strict guidelines to protect the environment, like not disturbing any wildlife or taking souvenirs like rocks, plants, or animals. Now, technically, can you live in Antarctica? While there are no laws banning people from living there permanently, it's a very inhospitable environment and unsuitable for human habitation. Temperatures can reach -76 degrees Fahrenheit and below, making it nearly impossible for anyone to survive without the proper equipment and experience. Plus, the nearest piece of land is over 1,000 miles away, making any inhabitants completely cut off from the rest of the world. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll get the chance to visit this unique and fascinating continent, but until then, let's admire it from afar. Let's now talk a bit about the discovery of Antarctica. Unlike other places that were already inhabited, Antarctica never had a native human population. Ancient Greek philosophers had an idea about the continent and called it Antarctos, meaning opposite the bear. The bears it refers to are not the polar ones, though, but rather the Great and Little Bear constellations, which are only observable in the northern hemisphere. As a result, the term signifies the opposite of the land of the bear. Whaling and sealing voyages in the late 1700s and early 1800s would venture further south when rounding Cape Horn at the tip of South America. It was known that going further south often meant stronger winds, but also the risk of hitting floating ice of all sizes and of winds and seas that could prove dangerous to the ship and crew. Captain James Cook was the first to cross the Antarctic Circle on January 17, 1773, in the Ross Sea region. He reached a point further north a year later, and though he didn't sight land, he came to within 50 miles and saw deposits of rock held in icebergs, indicating that a more southerly land existed. The first sighting of Antarctica is widely acknowledged to have taken place in January of 1820, during the voyage of two ships under the command of Captain Fabian Gottlieb von Bellingshausen, as part of a 2-year exploratory expedition around the world to discover new lands. The captain's ships were the first to have crossed the Antarctic Circle since Cook. The first undisputed landing on Antarctica didn't happen until much later, on January 24, 1895, at Cape Adare during the whaling voyage of the ship Antarctic, led by Henrik Bull. A small boat with 6 or possibly 7 men on board rowed ashore during calm conditions. You might not believe it, but Antarctica is actually a desert. With all that ice, you'd think it'd be like a winter wonderland with snowball fights and hot cocoa all day long. When we think of deserts, we picture camels and cacti and people struggling to find water. But in Antarctica, it's a whole different story. The struggle isn't to find water, it's to find anything that's not covered in ice. And the average rainfall has been just over 0.4 inches in the past 30 years. That's like a few drops of rain compared to what we're used to. So technically, it's not the dunes or sizzling heat that makes a desert, well, a desert. It's the lack of precipitation. But don't worry, if you ever find yourself lost in Antarctica, you won't have to worry about getting thirsty. Just make sure you bring a jacket and some mittens, because it's cold enough to make you into a popsicle. Not only is Antarctica one of the driest places on Earth, but it's also the coldest, the windiest, and the highest. Talk about overachieving. The penguins and scientists down in Antarctica have at times found themselves in a bit of a pickle when it comes to time. You see, unlike the rest of us on this big blue planet, there is no Antarctica time zone. All the lines of longitude meet at a single point at the South Pole, making it a bit of a head-scratcher when trying to figure out what time it is. Now, you might be thinking, but how do the scientists and researchers keep track of time down there? Good question. They typically stick to the time zone of the country they departed from. However, with stations from all over the world on the Antarctic Peninsula, things can get a little wacky. Imagine trying to coordinate with your neighboring countries without accidentally waking them up in the middle of the night. You might think that not much could survive in a place where the temperature is extremely cold, the sun barely shows up, and the wind could blow you away faster than a tumbleweed. Well, as in many places on Earth, life found a way in Antarctica too. Believe it or not, this frozen continent is buzzing with activity. It's home to billions of krill, which in turn attract lots of seals and more penguins than you can shake a fish at. But don't let their cute and cuddly appearance fool you. Penguins are the ultimate swimmers, with streamlined bodies that would make Olympic medal winners jealous. They come ashore to breed and chill, but their real talent is stealing pebbles from each other and forming mathematically precise huddles to stay warm. Antarctica is also home to the largest species of penguin on Earth. It's called the emperor penguin. Sure, these creatures are flightless birds, but that doesn't mean they can't jump. In fact, some of them can leap up to 120 inches. And let's not forget about the seals. With their furry bodies and special songs, these marine mammals are protected by the Antarctic Treaty, and they're thriving in the cool waters of the Southern Ocean too. But the real stars of the show are the whales. During the Antarctic summer, these huge creatures show up in droves to chow down on the abundant krill. It's indeed like a whale buffet down there.
The largest volcanic region on Earth is not in Africa or Japan, but under the ice of Antarctica. Scientists found 138 volcanoes in its western part, and if they decide to go wild, you'll surely notice it. They could melt huge amounts of ice that will move into the ocean, raise its level, and make our planet uninhabitable for humans. But before you pack your things to fly away to another planet, hear me out. Only 2 of the Antarctic volcanoes are officially classified as active now, and it would take a whole series of eruptions, decade after decade, to seriously impact the whole world. Mount Erebus, one of the 2 Antarctic volcanoes currently in action, proudly bears the title of the world's southernmost active one. It has been continuously erupting since at least 1972. It emits plumes of gas and steam and sometimes even spews out rocks, and scientists call it Strombolian eruptions. One of the coolest features is a lava lake in one of its summit craters, with molten material on the surface. Such lakes are rather rare because they need certain conditions to make sure the surface never freezes over. The second active volcano is Deception Island, a horseshoe-shaped landmass. It is the caldera of an active volcano that last erupted over 50 years ago. Scientists who monitor it say it shouldn't go wild anytime soon. Antarctica also has plenty of fumaroles. Those are volcanic vents that release gases and vapors into the air. In the right conditions, they can spew out enough stuff to build fumarolic ice towers up to 10 feet tall. Scientists keep an eye on the Antarctic volcanoes with seismometers that detect when the Earth starts trembling from volcanic activity. Sometimes they also use more complicated tech, but it's all really challenging because of how far away this polar region is and how tricky it is to get there. That's why no one can predict when one of the continent's volcanoes that are now sleeping might erupt. We can guess what this waking up would look like if we analyze the events from nearly 20,000 years ago. So, shall we? One of Antarctica's sleeping volcanoes, Mount Takahe, had a series of eruptions and spewed out a good amount of halogens rich in ozone back then. Some scientists say these events warmed up the southern hemisphere. Glaciers started to melt and help finish the last ice age. For these events to repeat, we'd need a series of eruptions with substances rich in halogens from one or more volcanoes that are now above the ice. It's an unlikely scenario, but since it already happened in the past, it's not completely impossible. As for volcanoes hiding under a thick layer of ice, it looks like their gases would hardly make it to the atmosphere, but they would be strong enough to melt huge caverns in the base of the ice and produce a serious amount of meltwater. The West Antarctic ice sheet is wet and not frozen to its bed, so this meltwater would work as a lubricant and set the overlying ice into motion soon. The volume of water that even a large volcano would generate in this way is nothing compared to the volume of ice beneath it. So a single eruption wouldn't make a difference. But several volcanoes erupting close to or beneath any of the western Antarctica's big ice streams would. Those ice streams are rivers of ice that take most of the frozen water in Antarctica into the ocean. If they change their speed and bring unusual amounts of water into the ocean, its level will rise. As the ice would get thinner and thinner, there would be more and more new eruptions. Scientists call it a runaway effect. Something like that happened in Iceland. The number of volcanic eruptions went up when glaciers started to recede at the end of the last ice age. So it looks like, for massive changes, several powerful volcanoes above the ice with gases full of halogens need to get active within a few decades of each other and stay strong over many tens to hundreds of years. Antarctica stores around 80% of all the fresh water in the world, and if they melted all of it, global sea levels would rise by almost 200 feet. And then we'd have to look for a new planet to live on. But this again is an unlikely scenario. It's more likely that the eruptions under the ice will lubricate ice streams and seep water into the ocean, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. A super strong, super angry supervolcano could do it though, and it has already happened in the past. Over 200 million years ago, the world went through a major makeover with not one, not two, but 4 massive volcanic eruptions in huge pulses. The supervolcano called Camp had been erupting over and over for 600,000 years. It all happened in Wrangell, a large chunk of land that used to be a supermassive volcano stretching across what's now British Columbia and Alaska. And it wasn't the lava or the volcanic ash that ruined the environment. The eruption made carbon levels skyrocket. The planet would never be the same again. This volcanic activity might have helped dinosaurs grow from cat-sized critters into giants we saw in Jurassic Park. It kicked off a 2 million-year rainy season. It made the whole world hot and humid, and the dinos just loved it. Researchers dug deep into sediment layers beneath an ancient lake in Asia to uncover these secrets. They found traces of volcanic ash and mercury, clear signs of those epic eruptions. There were carbon signatures showing huge spikes in carbon dioxide levels. It made the atmosphere toasty, and the rain poured down. So the bad news is, another eruption like this could happen. The supervolcano beneath Yellowstone National Park has been sleeping for nearly 70,000 years. But if it wakes up, it would be many times more catastrophic than the eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980. It's considered the most disastrous volcanic eruption in U.S. history. It followed 2 months of earthquakes and injection of magma below the volcano that weakened and destroyed the entire north face of the mountain. The eruption column went 80,000 feet into the atmosphere and spread ash over 11 U.S. states and several Canadian provinces. The last Yellowstone eruption was 1,000 times greater than that. The ground above Yellowstone sits on a hot spot made of molten and semi-molten rock called magma. This magma stuff flows into a chamber beneath the park, about 4 to 6 miles down, making the ground puff up like a balloon. But then, as it cools down, the ground goes back to its usual state. Volcano watchers have been keeping an eye on this for a century. They noticed the ground lift up about 10 inches around 20 years ago, but since 2010, it's been going back down. The experts say we have no big eruptions on the horizon, so Doomsday isn't coming anytime soon. But there's some underground activity going on lately which keeps us interested. Since humans haven't been around to witness every little thing Yellowstone does, it's kind of tough to say for sure what's brewing down there. Yellowstone has had some epic eruptions within the last couple million years. They happen like clockwork, with gaps of 600,000 to 800,000 years between them. The last big one was around 640,000 years ago, and it basically reshaped the entire landscape, spreading ash and debris as far as Louisiana. You can still see the aftermath of the last big eruption in the Yellowstone caldera today. Experts say a massive eruption like the last one is an unlikely scenario. We're more likely to see eruptions of steam and hot water or lava flows. When and with what force it will wake up remains a mystery to scientists.
The Loch Ness Monster is actually not from Scotland. Turns out, this real-life creature lived in the freezing waters of Antarctica about 70 million years ago. In 2019, researchers discovered fossils of a huge, prehistoric marine reptile that looked a lot like what people described as Nessie. This beast was terrifying, measuring up to 36 feet long with a massive giraffe-like neck. It also weighed around 15 tons, which is about the size of 3 elephants. Next up on our list of huge animals is a penguin. I know penguins aren't exactly what you'd call big, but scientists have just found what they think might be the biggest penguin ever, the Kumimamu fordyce. It's believed that these giant birds were hanging around New Zealand about 55 million years ago, and they were huge, weighing over 330 pounds. That's about 5 times the size of the emperor penguins, which are considered the largest penguins alive today. Now, let's move on from massive creatures to something much smaller. Meet B. manfredschmidti, a great ape that lived around 12 million years ago in what is now Germany. This creature is very special, as it's the tiniest great ape ever discovered. And when I say tiny, I really mean it. These ancient animals only weighed about 22 pounds. They were basically no bigger than a super chunky cat. If you think small creatures aren't scary, wait until you meet the electric blue tarantula. This newly discovered species from Thailand's mangroves has an almost otherworldly electric blue color. Its vibrant hue doesn't come from pigment, it is actually caused by the unique structure of its hair, which reflects blue light, making it look like an extraterrestrial being. We're going even further now, diving into the freezing pitch-black depths. At around 2,000 feet deep in the Andaman Sea, scientists found a new species of ghost shark, which they named Chimera supape. Their appearance is straight out of a horror movie. They have sleek, pale bodies, frills that look like feathers, and large, creepy eyes. These ghost sharks aren't actually sharks, but they are related, having diverged from their cousins about 400 million years ago. The good news is they're not too scary since they're only a bit bigger than a shoebox. Just when you think we can't find stranger creatures, we come across this ancient amphibian from Brazil. Scientifically known as K. rosae. This newly discovered giant crocodile-like creature lived during the Triassic period, over 240 million years ago. At nearly 10 feet long, it had a powerful jaw, resembling the modern-day alligator. This beast was definitely a survivor since it adapted to the most severe conditions ever seen on the planet. Last year, scientists were tracking the dense Amazon rainforest at night when they found some quirky orange spiders that looked like they were wearing black boots. The team soon discovered it was a new type of giant crab spider. And no, they don't look like crabs at all. They only got their name because, while perched on plants, these spiders spread their legs out to the sides, just like crabs. Do you know that some new species are named after celebrities? Hollywood icon Harrison Ford now has his very own snake, for example. Discovered in Peru, T. Harrison Fordy honors the actor famous for his role as Indiana Jones, an archaeologist with a notorious fear of snakes. Unlike the film's menacing serpents, this new snake species is quite modest in size, measuring about 16 inches long. We also have the Rampholion princei. a small new species of pygmy chameleon from Tanzania that was named after U.S. rapper and poet Prince Iya. He received this honor because of his work raising awareness about global environmental issues. Another celebrity namesake is DiCaprio's snail-eating snake, which hangs out in the shrubs of Panama's forests. This S. irmelindi caprioi is about 15 inches long and spends its nights on palm fronds looking for snails and slugs. Its round eyes look like glowing coals that can be a bit scary, but overall, the creature is super chill. Even when it feels threatened, it doesn't bite. It just coils up around its head and gives off a really bad smell. Now something a bit more sinister. Meet Venomius tomhardii. Does that name ring a bell? Exactly. This new species of spider was named after Tom Hardy's portrayal of the infamous Marvel character Venom. And all because the black spots on the spider's abdomen reminded researchers of the famous anti-hero. Most spiders of this species were found in Australia at night, sitting in their elaborate webs in forested areas near the coast. When disturbed, these creepy crawlers often hide in silk-lined hollows in tree branches. We've also got something for the Lord of the Rings fans. In the vast and warm waters of the Amazon River, scientists have just discovered a new species of pacu. This fish is a relative of the terrifying piranha, with a plant-based diet and human-like teeth. It was named Myloplus sauron because of a bold vertical black mark on its side, which reminded researchers of the fiery eye symbol of the villain Sauron from Tolkien's epic saga. Wait, is that a tanned capybara or a wild dog? Well, actually, it's neither. This is a newly discovered dwarf deer. This tiny creature, about the size of a basset hound, scurries through the forests of Peru. The combo of large eyes, stocky body, and short legs makes this animal simply adorable. This cute little deer is the complete opposite of what we've got coming up next. This bizarre-looking creature is what we believe the beast of 5 teeth might have looked like. Its fossils, found in Chile and Patagonia, showed that it lived during the age of dinosaurs, about 72 million years ago. This finding is just another piece of evidence that mammals had been roaming around that part of South America much earlier than we thought. Moving from the forests of South America to the deserts of Australia, we come across a sand dragon lizard, known scientifically as Cteniferus tayacalpa. With its sandy color and long, lean body, this lizard looks like it could star in a Dune movie. Discovered last year, this sand dragon lizard blends in perfectly with the hot sands of the Great Victoria Desert in southern Australia. For over 10 years, a large-eyed creature managed to hide from scientists who ventured into the mountains of southwestern China. But not this time. In 2023, the group finally managed to take photos of 7 frogs that didn't match any known species. They're now known as Leishan odorous frogs, a species that grows to be about 2 inches long and has small bumps all over their grass-green bodies. Off the coast of Chile, we have recently found a seamount nearly 4 times as high as the Burj Khalifa. Underwater mountains are usually home to beautiful life forms, like sponge gardens and ancient corals. But this Chilean seamount also hid a creature known as the flying spaghetti monster. It's a rare type of squid with long noodle-like tentacles that make it look like an underwater pasta dish. Including its tentacles, this strange creature can be over 130 feet long. Recently, scientists were diving into the cold waters of the Antarctic Peninsula when they thought they had found an ordinary dragonfish swimming by. But there was something unusual about this one. It turned out that this fish had 2 darker vertical stripes along its slender body. That's when they realized they were looking at a new species, the banded dragonfish. From bizarre sea creatures to a cute one. In 2017, locals were diving near Kume Island in Japan when they found the skeleton panda sea squirt. This deep-sea oddity quickly won people over with its look because its black spots actually resemble a panda bear's eyes and ears. At least if you have a good imagination. This unusual creature filters water to catch its food, and is yet another reminder of the ocean's hidden wonders.
A colossal iceberg, more giant than a city, broke away from Antarctica in mid-2021. It's so big, that it's 40 times bigger than Paris and 73 times the size of Manhattan. Imagine that you come out of your small holiday shack on the coast of South Africa, near the town of Port Elizabeth. You have a cup of tea in your hand as you've just woken up. You stand near the edge of your lookout, the vast Indian Ocean before you. Something catches your eye. To the right, there is something so monumental, you can't comprehend it. It's a giant slab of ice, 300 feet high, and stretching away many miles, as far as the eye can see. It rolls slowly, but relentlessly on, heading out into the deep sea. If it goes far enough, it could reach the western coast of Australia. Playing in front of it are a pod of dolphins, like they sometimes do off the bow of a ship. Yet they're just specks compared to the mammoth size. You're so shocked that you drop your cup. Your eyes are as big as saucers. It's like something out of a science fiction movie. Are you dreaming? Are you seeing things? Nope. It's A76. It's real, and it's currently on the move. What could happen to it is anyone's guess. Well, scientists have a few theories, but let's get a grasp of its size first. The iceberg is 110 miles long and 16 miles wide. It's basically the shape of a gigantic finger. If you were standing at the coast of Dover, looking across the English Channel toward France, the iceberg would be almost as wide. The channel is 21 miles across at its narrowest. That means approximately 2/3 of that distance would be filled with the iceberg. That's if it were drifting, finger pointing down, so to speak. If it were facing the other way, it could still enter the English Channel, but as it got closer to the narrowest points, it would smash into the coasts of both England and France. It would go up over land. It would slide over the green fields of England, the white ice bold against the rich green. It would cruise past the vineyards of France. It was temporarily lowering the temperature of everything around it. Those grapes would be like jelly crystals. It would skim right over highways, cars stopping to observe this colossal thing like a visitor from another galaxy. You could pluck chunks off it for your drink as it sailed past. Failing that, you could scale it and go ice climbing, right on the outskirts of London. It would certainly be handy in the summer. But let's get back to what actually happened, and what scientists think will happen to it. As of the beginning of 2022, A76 is the world's most giant floating iceberg. It was calved from the Filchner Ronne ice shelf in Antarctica in the middle of May 2021. Ice calving, also known as glacier calving, is the breaking up of ice chunks from the edge of a glacier. It then pulls away from the ice mass into a separate entity. If you were nearby, you would hear a lot of cracking and a massive booming sound. Blocks of ice up to 200 feet would break free and crash into the water. It would cause huge waves. Not even adventurous surfers would want to tackle those breakers. Ice calving is a natural event. The area where A76 broke off has seen little change in recent decades. There have been even larger chunks of ice than A76, but this one is currently the largest in the world. Scientists at the British Antarctic Survey spotted it. There are satellite images of it breaking free, as captured by the European Space Agency's Sentinel-1A satellite. The size at the calving was an estimated 1,670 square miles. Right now, it's in the Weddell Sea around Antarctica. The Weddell Sea is part of the Southern Ocean. It was named after the Scottish sailor James Weddell, who entered the area in 1823. Scientists have deemed the Weddell Sea to have the clearest water of any sea. Imagine peering down into its depths from a boat. What a fantastic view it must be. The area is full of whales and seals. As you look down, you may see killer whales, humpback whales, minke whales, leopard seals, and crab-eater seals. And if you look towards land, you'll likely see a colony of Adelie penguins. They're the dominant penguin species in this area because they adapt to the harsh environment. In fact, this is the only location in the world they live. What an incredible array of wildlife to observe, all from the comfort of the ship's deck, while you drink another cup of hot tea. It gets pretty cold in these parts. To get an idea of what could happen to A76, scientists refer to other data, such as the even more enormous iceberg called A68. It was calved from the ice shelf known as Larsen C off Antarctica in 2017. While it may be exciting, though a little daunting, to think of it also sailing up the English Channel, A68 floated out to warmer seas and, by early 2021, had all but dissipated. That was a relatively quick demise. Some icebergs have been observed floating around for up to 18 years. Suppose they remain in the relatively cold waters. It all depends on where A76 decides to go. Satellites have helped scientists keep track of these monstrous movements, whereas they would go unnoticed in the past. That's how they know that by day 148, this iceberg had split into 3 fragments, imaginatively titled A76A, A76B, and A76C. The numbers might be boring, but they're based on the Antarctic quadrant in which they were first sighted. If these enormous chunks do break up entirely, it will not add to rising sea levels because it was already part of the floating ice shelf. Imagine these ice chunks in your glass. They already take up a certain amount of space. They will simply change form into water. Icebergs like this one are different from glaciers or ice sheets found on land. Those are the things that help to raise sea levels when they break off and melt. For example, if the whole of Antarctica's ice sheet were to melt, it could raise sea levels by nearly 190 feet. If you think A76 is enormous, and it clearly is, there was another that makes it look small in comparison. On record, the largest iceberg was sighted in November of 1956, 150 miles west of Scott Island in the South Pacific Ocean. Ironically, it was seen by a ship known as the USS Glacier. It was sized over 12,000 square miles. This iceberg was larger than the country of Belgium. What may happen to the chunks of A76 will depend on a few factors. Ocean currents can make a significant impact, and wind direction and speed can too. They may move closer to coastlines, where they can freeze into pack ice. They can also drift into shallow waters and hit the seabed, called seabed gouging. The deepest part of the iceberg can act like the keel of a boat. It digs into the ocean floor, but the sheer size of the iceberg keeps it moving. Soon it's tearing up the floor, creating a long, narrow furrow or a gouge. Fish would scatter, the earth would shake, the noise would be tremendous. It's actually quite common in offshore environments near where ice is found. You would not want to be scuba diving nearby when one of these rips through. However, it would make for a spectacular sight. Generally, icebergs deteriorate through melting and fracturing, which, as you can imagine, changes the mass and the surface area. Combined with wind and ocean currents, it can make iceberg modeling difficult. As for A76, we'll just have to wait and see. Before we go, let's return to our imaginary voyage down the English Channel. The island of ice, 73 times the size of Manhattan, with its gigantic frosty finger pointed down toward the Celtic Sea, rolling steadily onwards, unable to be stopped. Hundreds of thousands of people have flocked to the coasts of both England and France to watch this extraordinary spectacle as it cruises by. On top of the ice, there are thousands of penguins playing happily. They almost look to be waving back to the abundance of sightseers who cheer them on their way, the children jumping with joy at the most spectacular sight they've ever witnessed.